Hello, I'm Cristina Puyol from It's on Fire, and here we have Joe Barret. He's one of our students from Boston, and we want... How are you?
I'm doing great. I was out dancing and at a party last night. We're ready to answer some questions today.
Okay, so we wanted to talk to Joe because he actually was in the Dominican Republic way back in the 60's, and we wanted him to share with us his experience with bachata when it first started on those. I mean, it didn't start on those years, but it was on their beginnings, and so we want to hear your experience, Joe. Can you tell us a little bit what you were doing there, what years, and all of that?
Sure. It was a great experience for me to go to the Dominican Republic in 1968. And it was total culture shock as an American to become a member of a new society and a new language. So I was learning Spanish. I was living with the people. I was working in the Dominican Republic as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I have some very favorite memories of those times, and especially La Bachata. I remember very, very distinctly waking up every morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of bachata. I was living in an agricultural area, and the people were getting up early, obviously, to go to the fields and work on their farms. And at the time, a portable radio, battery operated, was a very, very prized possession. For many years during the dictatorship of Trujillo, the only radio you could get was electric, and most people did not have electricity. This was the way that he controlled the society, controlled information. But after he was assassinated in 1964, people started buying these radios. At any rate, there was one radio station in the capital of Santo Domingo, La Guarachita, and they used to play early in the morning. I'm going to say from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, nothing but country music, which was bachata. I had no idea what it was, but even now I can remember hearing as I woke up bachata music. And I also remember living in the countryside. We didn't go out to clubs. They didn't have that kind of experience. But if they had a party, the parties were always in someone's house. And because the people I was living with were farmers, they liked their music, which was bachata. They also played merengue.
Did they call it bachata?
Sorry?
Did they call it bachata, or did they give it another name?
No, it was bachata.
They call it bachata.
I do remember also some of my friends in the nearby city were more upper-class people. They were educated. They were university. Music of the country people, the music of the poor people, of the working class, in the barrios. It was not a very high society kind of dance or music. So the rest of the day, you never heard bachata on any of the radio stations. It was only merengue.
And did the parties where they played merengue, did they have a different name? How do they call it? It was just fiesta maybe, or?
Well, normally they would have a fiesta, for example, for a saint. And sometimes it was like a fiesta de palos, which is a very different kind of cultural experience, different kind of music, different purposes. But if it weren't that kind of event, it was just a social party, someone's birthday, for example.
And in your experience, do you feel like the bachata you heard then is different than the one that you hear now? Or
very different. Yes, it's very different. The typical sound of the bachata is, I think people know it as the Dominican bachata, very fast-paced, and it certainly wasn't very professional. I think the music that was recorded was just 2 or 3 instruments and a singer, and they just threw something together. A lot of it was played live in all parts of the Dominican Republic. And I do remember lots of times people would come in with some drums and somebody had a guitar and they were playing bachata music and singing. But it was not with all instrumentation and high quality stereo or any of that.
But they have now. That's
Right.
nice. And how many years were you in the Dominican Republic at that time?
I was there from 1968 through 1971.
So it was...
I've been back like 25 times.
Oh my God.
Every time I go back, I hear new music, new groups, new singers, much more professionalism, obviously.
Uh-huh.
But it's still bachata.
Yeah.
It's not anything different. What's interesting is my daughter, I guess she was maybe 20 at the time, she was a college student, and she went back to the Dominican Republic. This was about 15 years ago. And she went out to a club in the capital and had a great time dancing. And so when she came home, she said, "Oh, Dad, I have to teach you this great new dance that I learned." I said, "It's called bachata." So she started dancing with me, and of course I knew what to do. And she said, "Dad, how do you know this dance? It's brand new." And I said, "Well, actually, bachata's been around for a while." And what happened, the bachata went from being a country music only for poor people to something that was very popular in the discotheques in the capital city.
Uh-huh.
So it began its first boom in the country. And then from there, it's spread all over the world.
Yeah. That's cool. That's a great story. So that's your daughter went there around the 2000 or early?
Yeah, I'd say 1999. No, it's amazing. Go to other countries like in Central America, and the Salvadorans or whoever, they're all into bachata music. Everybody's listening to bachata.
Now, yeah. Yeah, well, all over in Europe too. It's just spread all over the world. I remember we've been teaching for like more than 15 years, and suddenly people are like, "Oh, bachata is a new dance," like you're saying. It's like, no, it's been for a while, but some people, when they discover it, they think they just came out, you know, and it's actually been for a while. But it's also interesting to see the evolution. And when you
were very small,
yeah,
and they were packed with people, so there wasn't a lot of room to move around and do fancy things. And
yeah,
if you tried something like that, you'd be hitting people with your elbows left and right.
uh-huh.
Everybody danced. And the other thing I remember about those house parties, the windows are all open, and because it's hot in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And all of the neighborhood children are squeezed looking through the windows. And after 3 or 4 songs, bachata or merengue or whatever, the adults would step out to cool down, have a drink, talk a little bit. And the children would rush into the house. And the music would continue. And all these 5, 6, 8-year-olders would be dancing what the bachata that they watched their older brothers and sisters and their uncles and aunts and parents dance.
Oh, that's
so
great.
That's how they learned it at a very young age.
Yeah, that's cool. And did they move, like right now, you know, there's more or less a distinctive move of the hips.
Practices with Seymour and you, and I said, well, now this is bachata. That hip thing and boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Now I have a home here in Boston.
There
it is, that's it.
1, 2, 3,
So that was another a great experience for me to take the dance that I loved and do something different with it, something new, because the rueda de bachata didn't exist.
Yeah.
You guys made it up.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. And I also want to ask you, in that time, did the couples hold like in an embrace position, like a ballroom position? Or it was, yeah, okay. So it started already like a real couple holding, embracing, and getting close.
Oh, very much so.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Nice. And did they have a lot of fast footwork or no? Just the footwork was also simple? Just side to side or...
Footwork was very simple. Mm-hmm. Again, in the fiestas, in the parties, there wasn't a lot of room to be moving around. I've seen videos, and I know in certain places some people maybe did that style, but not. It just simply couldn't happen when there were so many people.
Yeah. And with the years that you came back, 25 or something, 25 times, when did you start seeing more acceptance of the bachata in the Dominican Republic before it became so popular all over the world?
Yeah, I guess it was still something that not everybody did. I think it probably was a generational happening. As the Dominican Republic society became more open to the world and more people traveled to the United States, you have to remember that the Dominican Republic in 1970 was still a very, very closed society.
Mm-hmm.
The people were still afraid of the return of the Trujillo family.
Yeah.
And what would happen. So people were reserved in their political views, I think, in their social views. I mean, most of the older people that I worked with were still living back in the days of the dictatorship. And it wasn't, I'm going to say, at least 15, 20 years before the young people grew up who didn't know that time of censorship and death squads from the police and all of that stuff. And they maybe were traveling to the United States to visit some relatives and going to the universities. And suddenly they were able to say, wait a second, I grew up as a child learning bachata, and this is part of who I am, and this is part of Dominican society. And we're the majority, so we're going to listen to bachata all the time. Mm-hmm. And that became the norm as the newer, younger generation came up. That's probably what my daughter experienced. She met these people that were children when I met them or hadn't even been born. And suddenly, they were university students in the disco in the capital. They were bachateros.
Yeah. And do they have there the parties like only bachata or only merengue, or do they always mix bachata and merengue and more things?
It was mixed from the very beginning. But it all depended if there was a conjunto perico repiao. There was lots of that fast merengue stuff from the countryside. It all depends on what music was available, I think, more than any other.
And do you think... Go ahead.
I say it was fun back then, the party, the music.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like a great experience to have lived and to be able to share. So thank you so much, Joe, for sharing it.
You're welcome.
Do you think that merengue influenced bachata a lot? Because really bachata comes from bolero. And if you listen to the beginning of bachata, it sounds to me totally like bolero. Different type of bolero, bolero vals and bolero clásico. So do you think merengue had a huge influence on that?
Gee, I really couldn't tell because I'm not a musicologist, but to me they're two very, very different dances. Mm-hmm. And, so I think people like Juan Luis Guerra, when they started playing bachata that was more acceptable to the larger society, maybe that had a bigger impact than the historical differences between the two. Mm-hmm. The Dominicans like both. They like their bachata, they like their merengue, and they like the modern urbano stuff too,
Yeah.
Some of the best contemporary bachateros in New York are also involved in merengue, I'm sure.
Nice.
One more memory, as I would travel around the Dominican Republic in very, very crowded little minibuses that were supposed to be for maybe 15 people, and we had 30 in them. The windows are open. That song! That was another favorite memory from my time in the Dominican Republic.
That's great.
Music is constant all the time. You can't avoid it in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Bachata and merengue, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to hear it, your neighbor wants you to hear the music that he's playing in his house.
The music that he likes.
The music that he likes. You probably like it too.
Yeah. Well, you have to, right?
That's right. No getting away from it.
That's a great story. Well, Joe, thank you so much, because we wanted to share this. We've been talking, Seymour and me, for a long time, that we wanted to talk to you and have these little stories shared because some people, they learn a dance but they forget the history and the culture behind it. It's really important to hear and learn a little bit about it. I think so.
Thank you for keeping up this series. It's great.